Hey folks, it's Ms. Schossler. I want to walk you through the assignment directions for assignment number 3. We are moving into this third assignment, which really does flow from assignment 2, and it prepares you for the first assignment in Nursing 495. So it will actually, the resources that you use here will be used in that assignment as well. Okay, so this paper, we're 30% of your grade, and it's really all about the I in your PCOT. Remember that. This assignment, the last assignment, it's really about the I, the intervention that you have planned. And I want you to imagine your PCOT question as a change that you plan to implement in your workplace. That change shouldn't have happened yet, and if it already is taking place, for example, I might talk about the skin-to-skin contact or kangaroo care in the mother-baby unit. If my hospital's already using skin-to-skin contact, you have to imagine that this has not taken place yet, because your I is really going to relate to a change that you propose for your work area, and that's how you create the projects ahead. So imagine that your PCOT question, the I, or the intervention in that PCOT question, is a planned change. You're finding research that says we should go forward with this change. And in the future, you're going to do a paper about implementing that change. So it's all about the I in the PCOT question. Okay, so in this paper for the assignment number 3, we're looking at 7 to 10 pages. That's a lot, but it's important that you fully address the literature that you have been and are finding related to your I, that intervention. These are research studies that are telling us that the I is, going forward with that I is based on evidence. So you're going to have a cover page, of course. It's an APA paper, and you're going to have a reference page. And excluding those, without even thinking of those, you still need 7 to 10 papers, 7 to 10 pages in between the cover page and the reference page. So at a minimum, your paper, including cover and references, should not be less than 9 pages, because 7 pages of meat and a cover page and a reference page, but it can be longer. All right, so here's what we're looking at in the rubric itself. And remember, I use that rubric to set up a outline for my paper. That's how you move towards success with your papers. Just use that rubric to create an outline for yourself. So of course you have that cover page, and then your introduction section is going to include a statement of the problem. Make this at least one full paragraph where you're introducing the topic to the reader. This first paragraph, like many of the research articles you're reading, is really aimed at introducing the main topic and helping the reader understand the importance of it. So within this first paragraph, and by the way, it can be 2 paragraphs if you so desire, but within this first section, remember the title of the paper should be the heading over the first section, should not be bolded, and then the first section should introduce your reader to the topic. Now let me give you an example. If I was going to talk about skin-to-skin contact or kangaroo care for mother-baby patients, my introduction section, I could perhaps start with the topic of the number of births in the United States over one day or a month or a year. Give that statistic to introduce the reader to how important this topic is. Look how often births are happening across the nation. And then I want to dive a little further into it so that eventually I bring the reader to the topic of the intervention I want to plan, and that's skin-to-skin contact, right? So I introduce first the topic of deliveries, how often they happen. I bring in a resource that supports it, and then whatever I'm aiming at for my O, or my outcome, can play into that first paragraph as well. For example, my PCOT question related to skin-to-skin contact could be something like this. In a mother-baby unit, does the implementation of skin-to-skin contact for 30 minutes after delivery, compared with separating mother and baby for triage of baby and care of the mother, affect the temperature of the infant over the first 24 hours of life? That's a PICO-T that is looking at a measurable outcome of body temperature for the baby. So I could use that body temperature of the baby in my first paragraph as well to introduce the topic of infants who are unable to regulate the temperature of their body, or how often that happens. So bringing in a source to support that as well. So I'm introducing my PICO topic, the subject of births. I'm diving down into it and talking about the temperature regulation, because that's my measurable outcome. Incidentally, I could also talk about patient satisfaction with the parents in that as an outcome. It could also be an outcome. And then I could address my I. The I in this case would be the use of skin-to-skin contact. So I would just give the reader a taste of that in the first paragraph or 2 paragraphs. And I want to include my PICO-T question in there as well. That would round out your first paragraph or first 2 paragraphs, however long you wanted that to be, making a clear statement about the problem. And a problem statement is simply that. The problem addressed with this PICO question is, and then tell us what the problem is. In my example, it might have been thermoregulation of infants, or it could have been satisfaction or mother-baby bonding in the newborn nursery. Okay, so your first section, 1 or 2 paragraphs, including your PICO question, an introduction to the general topic with some nice meaty guts about the statistics related to it, and your introduction of your I and your your outcome in there as well. The next section is your literature review, and you all have seen, I know that you've been reviewing research articles, and in those research articles, generally we have an abstract and then an introduction where they give us some much like you are in this first paragraph of your paper, introduce the topic and the problem to us. And many of your papers will then go into the literature review. Some of the research articles will call it background of the problem. Some of them will call it literature review. Some of them will call it something different. But the goal in that section is to address the current research available on the topic. Sometimes they'll go back into the history a little bit and tell you the history of the topic, and then they center on the current research available on this topic, because researchers then have to say, but here's what's missing, and then they're going to research that topic. But you are going to tell us about the current literature that you're finding on this topic. And in this section, the literature review section, you're going to have a total of 7 research articles on the I for your PICO-T question. That I is the intervention that you have planned, and I want you to think about the I as the change that you're going to implement in your work area. For example, in that PICO-T question I gave you about implementing skin-to-skin contact or kangaroo care, that I, skin-to-skin contact or kangaroo care, that's the planned change I have for my workplace. I will say to you that even if you have this already going on in your workplace, even if I already have skin-to-skin contact as a process in the mother-baby unit I work on, I need to act as if I don't in this paper, because in your future paper in 495, you're going to talk about that planned change. And so you have to think about it in your mind as something that is not happening yet, that you are going to implement based on the research that you're finding. And by the way, the research you're finding should support that planned change for the I, the intervention. So that literature review section, at least 7 research articles, including the one you turned in for your your assignment number 2, as long as it was a real research article. And you'll get feedback back from me telling you whether it was or not. So these 7 articles must be within the last 5 years. They must be research articles. We're talking qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, meta-analysis, or systematic reviews on your I for the PICO-T question. So you're going to talk about those, and you can, and I'm sure you have seen examples of research that shows you a literature review that is a couple of paragraphs long, some that are a couple of pages long, some that address one research article at a time, and some that address multiple research articles in each paragraph. You can do either one of those things. You can address one research article at a time. For example, you might give each research article that you found its own paragraph as you describe it, or you might combine more than one in each paragraph. But remember, you want a paragraph to be 5 to 7 sentences long. You want each article to talk about the type of methods that was used in that research article, the findings in the research article, and the way that it impacts your PICO-T question. So that information needs to be included for each one of the research articles. So you can see how it gets to be a 7 to 10 page paper. And then, so here in literature review, you can have 7 separate paragraphs, or you can have 3 or 4 paragraphs that address more than one article in each one. But make sure that you address the real guts of each article. So each article should tell us the methodology used, it should tell us the results found, and it should tell us how that relates to your PICO question. The next section is a summary of findings, and this section is where you tie all these research articles together. So this can be, I would suggest that it would be a couple of paragraphs long, where you bring the whole body of 7 research articles together and talk about them in relationship to the proposed intervention of your eye. A little bit of this, excuse me, my cough, a little bit of this might overlap with your literature review, but for the most part, you're talking about the whole body of evidence here. And when you do that, again, I suggest a couple of paragraphs long. When you do that, give specific examples inside of those paragraphs that relate back to each one of the articles. So in the body of those 1 or 2 or even 3 paragraphs, all 7 of your research articles should be cited at least one time. So that's a summary of the findings, and it ties the research articles back to your PICO-T question and to the proposed I, that intervention in your PICO-T question. And then, of course, we have points for format and submission, making sure it is in APA format. And if you have any questions about that, I am very happy to help you with it. Reach out and let me know if you have questions. And I hope you are enjoying this, watching your topic go from a PICO-T question all the way through to a proposed change, which will lead into your Part 2 in Nursing 495.